The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, complete retelling and interpretation. Chapter 1, The Awakening. One morning, Gregor Samsa, a weary and overworked traveling salesman, wakes up to find that he has been transformed into a gigantic insect. Lying on his back, he sees his thin, twitching legs waving helplessly in the air. His large, brown, segmented belly gleams with a hard, shell-like surface. At first, Gregor refuses to believe it. He thinks he must be dreaming or hallucinating, but when he tries to get out of bed to catch his morning train, he realizes he can no longer control his new body. His attempts to roll over cause him to fall heavily to the floor. Meanwhile, he hears his mother, father, and sister Greta knocking at the door, wondering why he hasn't woken up yet. His mother sounds worried, his father irritated, and Greta sympathetic. Gregor, the family's only breadwinner, normally leaves home before dawn each day for work. The family depends entirely on his income. Unable to answer properly, he hears that his company's chief clerk has arrived to investigate his absence. When Gregor finally tries to speak, his insect voice emerges as an incomprehensible, shrill noise. The clerk recoils in fear, his mother faints, and his father panics. At last, when Gregor manages to open the door and show himself, they all scream in terror. His father slams the door shut, trapping him inside his room. Hungry, frightened, and confused, Gregor doesn't understand what has happened to him. Only Greta, his kind sister, dares to bring him food. Soon, Gregor discovers he can no longer stomach fresh human food like milk and bread. Instead, he craves spoiled leftovers and garbage. Chapter 2, Isolation. Days pass. Gregor begins to adapt to life in his dark room. He crawls on the walls and ceiling, hiding from the light. Greta continues to feed him and clean his room, though she avoids looking at him directly. His parents, however, no longer mention his name. His mother remains sorrowful but terrified. His father, once a broken and unemployed man, now wears a servant's uniform and goes back to work. Listening through the door, Gregor learns how the family discusses debts and living expenses, and he realizes how completely he had supported them before. One day, Greta and her mother decide to clean Gregor's room and remove the furniture to give him more space to crawl. But this angers Gregor deeply. Those objects are his last link to his human life. Especially precious to him is a framed picture of a woman in furs, a symbol of his lost dreams and desires. When his mother sees him clinging to the picture, she faints in terror. Greta screams, and their father, returning home, flies into a rage. Grabbing apples from a fruit bowl, he hurls them at Gregor. One apple lodges painfully in Gregor's back and stays there, festering and never healing. From that moment on, Gregor becomes weak and exhausted. The family decides to keep him isolated and out of sight. Chapter 3, Forgetting and Death. Months pass. The family grows poorer but begins to act as though Gregor no longer exists. His room fills with clutter and dust. Only an old cleaning woman tosses him scraps of food out of indifference. To earn money, the Samsas take in 3 lodgers, stern, tidy men who are unaware of Gregor's presence. One evening, as Greta plays her violin for them, Gregor is drawn by the music. Despite his frailty, he crawls out of his room, yearning to be close. The music awakens what little remains of his human soul, but when the lodgers see him, they shout in disgust and threaten to leave. The family is overwhelmed by shame and anger. Then Greta, trembling but resolute, turns to her parents and says, "This creature is no longer our brother. As long as it's here, we can't go on living." Hearing this, Gregor silently retreats to his room. He no longer resists. In the darkness, he lies down and quietly dies. The next morning, the cleaning woman discovers his dried, lifeless body and throws it out. When the family learns of his death, they feel an unexpected sense of relief. They decide to move out and start anew. As they ride the tram together, they talk about the future, and realize that Greta has grown into a beautiful young woman who should soon marry. Brain philosophical and psychological analysis. 1. Alienation and the modern human condition. Gregor lives in a world that values people only for their productivity. When he can no longer work, he ceases to be human in the eyes of others. Kafka's story is a critique of capitalist society and the alienation it produces, the human reduced to a tool. 2. Inner and outer metamorphosis. Kafka suggests that Gregor was already transformed long before his physical change. His monotonous, mechanical life had stripped him of meaning and joy. The grotesque metamorphosis simply makes visible the dehumanization he had already endured. 3. Guilt and punishment, Jewish and Freudian influences. Gregor's suffering has no clear cause, he is punished without sin. Like figures from the Old Testament, he bears an inexplicable guilt. From a Freudian lens, his transformation reflects repressed desires, suppressed sexuality, and the suffocating pressures of family duty. 4. The role of the family. The Samsas depend on Gregor when he can provide for them, but once he becomes a burden, they reject him. Kafka's dark irony reveals that familial love, in a utilitarian world, is conditional, it lasts only as long as one remains useful. Performing art's final message. Kafka's Metamorphosis is a haunting portrait of the 20th century human being, isolated, devalued, and lost in an impersonal, materialistic world. Yet Gregor's death brings a kind of release, not only for his family, but perhaps for himself as well, a final escape from a life that had long since ceased to be human.